Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Jaci Russo explains how she put an end to her 8-month drought of new clients. Jennifer Kerhin takes us through the bureaucratic nightmare of managing remote workers based out of state. That is a headache that I don't wish on my worst enemy, says Jaci, who has found a way to sidestep the problem. And Liz Picarazzi brings us up to date on her ongoing struggle to get her trash enclosures certified as bear resistant. The common thread to these challenges may lie in these two questions. When is continuing to fight the good fight the definition of entrepreneurship? And when is it the definition of insanity? Plus, why does it cost so much to exhibit at a trade show? And did you know that as recently as 35 years ago, there were still laws in the books requiring women to have a male relative co-sign on a business loan? Those laws are now gone, thankfully, but Jaci, Jennifer, and Liz can all attest that that kind of paternalism is very much alive and well. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Jennifer Kerhin, who is CEO of SB Expos at Events, an events management business based near Baltimore, Maryland. Liz Picarazzi, who's CEO of CityBin, which is based in Brooklyn, New York, and makes trash enclosures and package bins. And Jaci Russo, CEO of Brand Russo, a marketing agency based in Lafayette, Louisiana. The episode is titled, Clients and Taxes and Bears, Oh My. Welcome, Jennifer, Liz, and Jaci. It's great to have you here. Jaci, let's start with you. The last time you were here, you told us that you'd gone 8 months and counting without signing up a new client, and you were somewhat concerned about that. Anything new?
I think it's somewhat concerned is a very nice way of saying it, Lauren. I think it was heart racing, palms sweating, and really starting to freak the fuck out. So luckily, while I was traveling at the beginning of October, we signed not one, but 2 new clients, which is par for the course. We average about 1.5 per month. And it's what I think it was, which is bigger clients, newer markets, longer lead times, stronger processes for approvals. And it's a little bit of my impatience matched with some improvements to our process. And now here we are back on track.
Glad to hear it. You mentioned last time you changed your process, I think the way you do proposals a little bit, and that you were going back to the way you did it before. Can you tell us more about what that was? And is that what you're referring to?
Oh, yeah. So, well, we did a number of things differently. You know, I'm fascinated by the line between the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and the definition of entrepreneur, which is to keep going, even though sometimes all signs tell you to quit. So I find those two things to be the same and in direct conflict with each other. And that's the 2 hats I switch out every day. So it's about making subtle changes that I think are improvements while still staying on the path to what I think is the right direction. And, you know, I have a really great team and I trust them to do their jobs. My job is to help them, support them, encourage them, and get out of their way. So we changed our proposal process to something that we felt was a little softer, a little more storytelling, a little more client focused, less us focused. And that fell flat. And we went back to the thing that I think is the exact opposite of what it should be, which is it's all about us. It's all about how we work. It's all about what we do. And we're 2 for 2.
How do you explain that?
Well, I can tell you that we're going to stick with our old proposal from now on, and I'm not going to mess with that again. I think it's a couple of things. I think we weren't being detailed enough, and so we've corrected that. I do think there's still a place for the customer as the hero, for the client as the subject of the story, but they're hiring us. And so we can't go so far with that pendulum swinging into one direction that we miss the opportunity to still give them a reason why we're the right choice.
I was interested in hearing what you said about the definition of insanity and continuing to plow on as an entrepreneur. That's something that I've talked to a lot of business owners about. Nobody starts a business and builds a business without being really stubborn and ignoring all the people saying, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Go get a job. Everybody hears that kind of thing. And you have to keep going. But at some point, you have to recognize when something isn't working. You have to recognize when it is time to take advice from other people. I'm curious, Liz or Jennifer, have you confronted this issue?
I definitely have. I know I'm insane, and I am okay with that. I think a lot of it has to do with being an entrepreneur, or maybe the entrepreneur is a symptom of being insane. But I totally agree with Jaci that they go together. With me, I definitely have a little bit of a rebellious streak. If someone says something can't be done, my reaction is going to be, I'll show you, which is not exactly a healthy thing, but it has sort of worked for me as an entrepreneur. And I think there is almost an aspect of gambling, an addiction even, in being an entrepreneur. That's not to say that we're all like, addicts, but, there's some similarity with, doing something over and over and not having it like be right for you and kind of being on the line. That even though while we're in it, it feels really uncomfortable, when we get through that discomfort, it almost always feels worth it. And that's what you're going for, is that feeling of I've prevailed, I've made it, and a little bit of I've proved them wrong. So there's some righteousness in it. But that's how I would explain like my experience with the entrepreneurship being related to being insane.
Have you figured out a way that works for you, Liz, to decide when it's time to just keep plowing ahead and when it's time to change direction?
I would say I definitely don't have it totally figured out. But as I get older, I just realize that I'm more exhausted when I'm very willful about things and when I'm very like pushy and insistent. So that's definitely a big part of who I am. But if I notice that I'm super fatigued by, oftentimes it's trying to like push a boulder, up a mountain. And as I get older, that's feeling a lot more tiring.
How about you, Jennifer? Have you confronted this as well?
I think every entrepreneur, every CEO has. I think I have a different approach than Liz. I have been more of a reluctant entrepreneur. I embrace it now fully, but in the beginning, for a long time, I was a little bit more reluctant, very reluctant. I think what I see in myself is I am not afraid of failure. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to embrace the fact that you will fail in something, in many things, in lots of things. And it doesn't even matter actually if your business fails, because you can get another business, right?
Oh, it matters if your business fails.
Well, I get it, but there's so many people out there that start a company, go forward, and realize there's just not enough return on the investment, on the equity and the sweat equity or the time spent. So they close the business down. I don't mean that it fails, but they close it and they start a different one. Those entrepreneurs that are serial entrepreneurs who've had multiple companies and they say, okay, this was good, but it's not enough for me. I'm going to close it down and move somewhere else. I think if you can embrace failure and not take it personally, embrace it and say, look, it's just not the right fit. The market's decided, and to move on. That to me is how you can keep your head above water. You're not a failure personally. The business failed. Or if you're going to try something, how many times have all of us tried something? It didn't work. You just got to plow forward. So to me, it's less insanity and more accept the fact I'm going to fail and how I'm going to get out of it.
Have you figured out how to decide when it is, in fact, a failure and time to do something different, and when it's worth hanging in there and keep pushing?
I mean, I think the two metrics for me are the market's pretty good at deciding if what you're trying to do doesn't sell, or if people start resigning. So your culture's not working or something's not working internally. Those two are the standard metrics that I think about. And as long as things are selling, there's some healthy profit, and people are staying, then we're doing something right.
Jaci, when you told us last time about your drought, we had a conversation and you indicated that you'd wondered a little bit as to whether your move to a 4-day week with people working 20% less might have had an impact and had some role in creating that drought. Did you end up thinking that that was a factor?
Oh, Lauren, I think you are the wisest man I know, but I have to correct you on this one point. I didn't think that. Jay said that. And Jay doesn't think it. I think Jay is going to die on that sword swearing by it. I strongly disagree with him.
Jackie, you're absolutely right that Jay brought that up. But maybe I'm wrong. I thought you had said that the thought had occurred to you as well.
If I said something to indicate that, then I misspoke. I did say then and do still know now that we will be a less profitable company, bottom line, by the 4-day week because I'm going to end up hiring more people to fill that 20% gap. I mean, it's just inevitable. I cannot get 40 hours of work out of somebody who's only working 32 hours. I mean, that's just the way it is. But that's something that I am comfortable with and committed to and happy about because I'd rather be a little bit less profitable and have the culture that we have right now and have the happy team that I have right now.
Jackie, I was thinking about when you were talking about worrisome about clients coming in and then of course they came in. How long is work with you? Do they come and work for a month, 6 months, a year? Is it recurring? What does that look like?
We are probably about 80% total revenue, 80% retainer, and 20% project. Our average client life right now is 5 years, 8 months.
Okay. So you keep a lot of your clients. So when you get a new one, it's great.
We do.
Jennifer, let's talk about you. We haven't seen you in a while because you've been traveling a lot during your trade show busy season. Have you made it through that busy season and how's it going?
October is the month for trade shows. We have 11 of them starting from the end of September to the mid-November. It's a crazy time for us, but it's been an exciting time. Trade shows are happening. There's great attendance across all of our client meetings. Exhibitors are really happy. The post-COVID surge, which people weren't sure if it was going to be temporary or permanent, is continuing. And we are very into doing hybrid events, and those continue strong as my association clients are trying to figure out the right mix between in-person versus virtual. So everything is moving full steam ahead, and I'm pretty excited.
When we last spoke to you, you were also excited about your new website, which I think you were completing in stages. You weren't completely through with it, but you'd made some big progress. How's that going?
Also fantastic. I need to knock on wood, it sounds like. The website's gone great. We've gotten a lot of people commenting on it. Our case studies are continuing. They haven't been published yet, but they're being written and produced. We also did a lot of B-roll footage because we're creating some videos. So the videos will be out January 1st. So when we were on show site and conventions, we had someone go around and film. So we're firing on all cylinders. I've hired a couple new leaders for my team. Pretty excited about that. I think a lot of things are going really well. It's been a very tough couple years, and I feel like I'm seeing, what is that sailboat reference where you're the headwinds, right? We're just making incredible progress with the headwinds.
In the past, Jennifer, we've talked about you working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, trying to keep up. I'm happy to hear about those hires. Has that helped?
Not yet. It should. It should. I'm still working ridiculous hours, but it's our busy season. As we get through it, these leaders are going to be taking a lot of stuff off my plate. It's interesting as you go through stages. We hired an incredible amount of staff, but getting to the next stage of management and leadership is a stage we're now. So they've just started, and then automating a lot of our finances. So I spent a lot of time the last 4 to 6 months automated finances. And this past month was the first time someone else sent out invoices. Someone else did the accounts payables. It's been fantastic. I just oversee it. So I think soon, I'm still working crazy hours, but soon we're going to get there.
Do you feel like the stuff you're doing during those crazy hours is mostly stuff that you should be doing, or are you still doing some chores that you really need to offload?
I think it's a combination. Some of the work I'm backfilling, we took on clients where the complexity level is higher than our typical ones. And so I'm backfilling support to help some people who can do the day-to-day, but need a little bit more support to get to that higher level. And I'm doing some tasks that I shouldn't be. I need to offload. And then I'm doing some tasks as you build. Somebody's got to do it, right? Someone's got to take a hold of the marketing team and do it. There's vision stuff I just can't get rid of. But for the first time, I feel that the things I should be doing as CEO take up more time than things that I shouldn't be doing, which is good. Balance of power is back to me being a CEO rather than just a worker bee.
Can you tell us what those positions were that you hired for?
Sure. We hired a director of trade show sales. Sales is my love. And I had been trying to do that job over a team because that's where we started. It's a typical story of a CEO holding on tightly for something for too long. Hired a new director of trade show sales. She just started. Fantastic. The team likes her. I look forward to getting off of this more and more. I think it's going to make a big difference with us.
And you work fully remote, right? Is this somebody that you found in your neighborhood or around the world?
Around the country, not world yet. We're not quite global. We found someone in the Midwest. We're in 13 states, I think now, which I still cannot. We need to do another podcast of how complicated state taxes, state fees, local taxes, local fees, and the whole process with the federal government. It is a nightmare. No one has caught up yet to remote workers from a tax standpoint, but
you can't automate that?
No, can't. I've tried. I've called companies, called ADP. ADP is my payroll processor. No, I haven't found a way yet. It is still very, very, very time consuming and complicated.
Jaci, I think you have people working around the country. Are you facing this issue too?
The people that we have that are not based in Louisiana are all independent contractors for exactly that reason.
Yep. It's complicated. It's not easy.
It's very complicated.
It's easier to handle if they're an independent contractor as opposed to an actual employee?
Yeah, she's not paying taxes.
Right. But so they have to really be independent contractors because you don't want to run the risk of coding them that way and violating the rules. So we have gone through and checked and double checked, and they are absolutely independent contractors. So we're able to do it that way.
Are you able to manage them the way you would like to while avoiding doing things that would make them count as an employee?
Well, I don't manage them like an employee because they're not employees. And so they don't attend our staff meetings. They're not a part of our team the way that our teammates are. But they have a specific project and they do that specific project and they're paid a specific amount of money for that project. And they do projects for other people. So they are true independent contractors. But to take on the cross-state payroll taxes, that is a headache that I don't wish on my worst enemy.
It's been a big headache. And the government, the local, state, and the federal government was not prepared for the mass amount of remote workers post-COVID. On one of the earlier podcasts, we talked about, I had an argument with Jay about commercial buildings. You will start to see a lot more commercial buildings are being converted to residential. It's a painful process. It's expensive. But I don't think these downtowns are coming back to people love to work remote. And so a lot of commercial buildings versus residentials, they're behind. They just haven't caught up to what's happening out there. And the tax situation is the same way. Those two pillars of people coming into office, we're just not going back.
I have to admit, I thought the tax issue was more easily handled. It's baffling to me that ADP hasn't solved that problem.
It's a purely side effect of the amount of people working remote and the companies like mine, small companies that could take advantage of this. And so I'm getting the benefit of incredible employees throughout the states, but the complication is high. The compliance issues are severe. And there's certain states that I'm not even going to hire from because they're just going to make my life way more difficult.
It's just so hard to believe that. I mean, this is such a big issue. There's so many companies doing this.
Well, there's big companies, giant companies with 10,000 employees. So they have an entire HR compliance department. There's small companies that go the way Jaci did with the 1099 route. They hire just, contractors. And then the rest of us in this are trying to figure out what's best. And then states are fighting with each other over tax issues, right? So who gets the tax on it? It's not easy.
Jennifer, while you were in your busy season, we had a trade show issue come up here.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Liz had a trade show in Chicago where she ran into an issue. Liz, tell Jennifer.
It was an issue that's universal for trade shows, so I pretty much knew it would happen there. And that's that if you bring a lot of things for your booth as an exhibitor, particularly if they're heavy and large, like my enclosures are, the bill for me to send it from Brooklyn to Chicago and back, not only shipping, but actually even more importantly, the handling on site is ridiculously expensive, like $4,000. Like if I would have let things in Chicago go as they were intended to by using the presumably union people there to move my things, I mean, it would easily have been $3,000 to $4,000. So, we came up with this scheme where we shipped it to Jay at his warehouse, and then we used his minivan to take it to, I forgot the name of the place in downtown Chicago. And we kind of brought it up the side door. And even though we have such a big booth, we just kind of snuck it all in there.
Was it the McCormick Center?
No, Palmer House.
Oh, at a hotel?
Okay.
Yeah, it was at the Palmer House. It was really nice. And, I kind of feel bad doing that. But what I don't love is that if you're a small business and you're attending and you're exhibiting, there's often expenses that you totally don't account for, which pop up. The drayage is one of them. And then the second thing is with the scanners. So scanning people that come into your booth, some trade shows let you have that as part of your payment. Some of them make you pay. If you have 2 or 3 people there, it can get pretty expensive. And, I know that everybody needs to make their money a certain way, but I wish that there was more transparency with what your additional costs would be to be an exhibitor.
Well, there's 2 things. The first one is material handling and drayage. When you hold a convention, there is significant cost to it, right? Exhibitors are subsidizing the cost of getting all those people there. So the benefit to you as an exhibitor is that you may have the opportunity to get 500 to 10,000 of your potential clients in one place. But that's pretty expensive to do, right, in creating it. And so they pass those costs on the exhibitors in different ways. And one of those, your booth is just a small part of the way you're paying for access to it. And I think what happens is small companies think, well, the booth is the most of it, and then maybe hotel and travel. Really, the booth is just one part of it, because what happens, and especially not at hotel ones as much as, but in convention centers, there are union labor calls. And the union, you couldn't do a convention without union labor or without labor. You are so needed. Sometimes we have, for some of our trade shows, a call for 300 people. They're absolutely necessary to do. But the host organization is not paying for that labor. Exhibitors are. And the way it's being paid is by distribution across it based on material handling. Or the table that you wanted to rent for 2 days is $450. Or the TV that you wanted to rent is $600 for 2 days, right? Because they're taking all those costs for the labor that's needed for the entire convention center, and they're basically dividing it up. Because the host organizer, whether it's a for-profit company, a consumer show, or the association, they're not usually paying that. It's being divided into small, into chunks for the exhibitors to pay. So small companies do get hit, especially, Liz, if you have heavy stuff. Absolutely. Material handling and drayage is done based on weight. There's very little ways to get around it. You were able to define the small door at the Palmer House. You'd never be able to do that in a convention center. The other one, the scanning, it's interesting you talk about that because it's called lead retrieval. That's the technical term. We sell lead retrieval. $200 is pretty cheap. We normally sell it anywhere from $350 to $500.
I'm sure. I bet.
You can use business cards, right? But to be able to scan it to get them into their phone, that is, I love it because we sell it. So I think it's fantastic. It's just easier and better to scan their badge. And the association or the organizer, whoever it is, they don't want to give up their most prized possession is their list of people, names, and emails and phone numbers. And so problem is small businesses think that the exhibit booth price and the travel is all they're going to spend. And really that could be maybe just half of the cost at a trade show.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. And it is unexpected.
I think it's not clear. I think to your point, sometimes it's not very clear, but your booth cost may be the cheapest part of the entire aspect of a trade show experience. You just have to hope and market, or think of the marketing as that the business you'll get will far exceed the costs of marketing at a trade show, right?
Yes. But I'll think of it in terms of profit. My margin on the trade show is going to be a lot lower if I pay the drayage. So that's why I get in there and I'm like, do you know what? Is this really going to pay off for me with a gigantic and very heavy? I don't really like the idea of me subsidizing everybody else because my stuff is heavy.
Well, Liz, that's just the way it's set up. That's the business model. When you are an exhibitor, your booth is just one part of the overall cost of everything. The material handling is an important aspect of it. So I hear you, but that's not going to change. I think for you with a hotel, you have better luck with the hotel than you would with a convention center.
Well, actually, we've done it in both places. I'll be honest.
Okay. You've obviously found the right trade show to go to and to make sure that it just fits the investment fits for your marketing plan. It's not going to change, though. The material handling is something that's always discussed, but it's a critical component of being successful. That we couldn't hold a trade show without labor, and most of the time it's union labor. We couldn't do it. And so somehow that's got to get paid.
Yep. I see the math.
Yep. I hear you. It's, we get those questions and calls all the time.
Liz, the last time you were here, you told us that you hadn't been able to do your bear test of your trash enclosures the way you hoped to, but that you had an appointment to try again. Has that happened? If so, how did it go?
So it did happen, and this center is in Montana, and they let us know that they would be testing the enclosure with the bears. It was a couple of weeks ago, and that we could watch it from the bear cam, which they have there. So a lot of what I would have seen if I was actually out there, I was able to see with the bear cam. And I also had a videographer there to video the whole thing.
And for those who didn't hear that previous episode, you actually were there, and unfortunately were not able to do the test while you were there because there was a problem with setting up the enclosure, which you thought you would be able to set up, but they insisted on setting up, and it didn't go correctly. Do I have that right?
Yes, you got that right.
How frustrating, too.
I'll cut to the chase. So there's lots of grizzly bears there. There's, going to be, as I think, multiple shifts with the bears throughout the day, usually 1 to 2 bears over 5 to 6 hours. And then that is that going to give them time to break into it? Well, the bears tipped over the bin after like 2.5 minutes, which was totally surprising to us.
Not broke into it, they tipped it over.
They tipped it over, but then they were able to get in from the top. So the doors that are normally on the side, once the bears tipped it over, were then on the top, and then they were able to get on top of it and break into it. But the tip is what the real issue is that all trash enclosures, particularly bear resistant, need to be anchored to the ground. It's like a guideline, and anything you'll see, it's a guideline with the Grizzly Bear Interagency Committee. They did not fasten the enclosure to the ground, and it seemed that they also didn't level it. So I guess what I could say about this is that I failed the test, but I'm not sure if I really failed it. I really wish that I failed the test and I knew I failed it. That feeling of I don't really know if this was a legitimate test has gotten to me, because that leveling part and the anchoring is so important. It's what we do. It's what all of the other enclosures that they've tested do. So I'm at a point right now where I need to decide, am I going to test this again if I can't be assured that it won't be anchored? So I'm thinking that if they can't assure me that it will be anchored, I don't know if I'm going to test it, and particularly not at that place.
And I guess the real issue here is who is setting it up. I mean, if they let you set it up, on your own, you would be able to do it precisely the way you want to.
I'm moving past it. Honestly, there's another place called the Wildlife Management Institute where you can test with black and brown bears, and that's actually in Florida at a zoo. And we're going to work to have it tested there, but I am going to make sure in advance that it can be anchored, because if it can't mimic the true situation as it would be, in a residence, then, I'm going to fail again. I mean, I don't know for sure because grizzlies are a lot bigger and stronger than like black and brown bears.
But you can still market these products as bear resistant, I think you told us. Is that right?
Yes, we can. We just cannot put the IGBC certified kind of label on it. So we continue to sell bear resistant trash enclosures. We've been selling them for about 3 years now. I would never say bear proof, and I would never say certified bear resistant. But yes, we are still in the process of getting certified.
We are just about out of time, but I want to hit one more thing before I let you go. I recently highlighted a story in the Morning Report that reported that up until 35 years ago, there were still laws on the books requiring women entrepreneurs to have a male relative co-sign on a business loan. I hate to admit it, but that took me by surprise. Is that just my ignorance, or are any of you surprised by that as well?
I am not surprised one bit. I have a great story to tell you. My husband and I, we've been married 29 years. He is a very charming person, and he loves to go in person to the bank. I've never gone. I hate going in person anywhere. I'd like to do everything by email and phone if I could. And he goes to the bank, I don't know, a couple times a week. And I think it wasn't that long. It was post-COVID. He went in and transferred money from my bank account from my company into our personal account, and they just let him do it. And I said, what did you do? Did you have a check by me? He goes, no, I just told him I needed to move money over because we needed a partner distribution. I said, how were you able to? You're not on my bank account for my business. You're not on my business. I'm 100% owner. This was not a little bit of money. This was like a couple $1,000s. How did you do it? Oh, I know the ladies at the bank. I walked into that bank. I said, how do you know we're happily married? How do you know we weren't in the middle of the divorce proceedings? How do you know that why did you let anyone take money out of well, he's your husband. These are women bank managers themselves. I about had a fit to do it, that was allowed. And I don't think it was allowed. It was just, small town. He was a nice guy, charming. I think if I tried to take money out of my husband's bank account, nobody would have let me. But it was certainly fine that he was able to do it.
I've got another one for you. How about I'm getting a whole home generator installed, so when our electricity goes out, we won't lose power. And the salesperson, who very much wants this 5-figure check from me, tells me that in order for him to come over to the house to walk me through how the process is going to work, give me the proposal so I can sign it so they can install it, that I'll need to make sure my husband is there so that he can sign the contract. And I said, excuse me? I can sign a contract? And he said, well, we just find it better if the gentleman of the house is there to finally approve it in case you don't explain it properly to him of how he works. And I was like, okay, you don't know me and my husband, but he's a graphic designer who couldn't figure out how to get through TSA pre-check today because he's flying by himself and had to call me 5 times.
I know that. I hear that.
He is a brilliant man in his area of expertise, but let me assure you, signing a contract is not his area of expertise. I'll be picking a different generator company. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I think with business, I am a little bit surprised, like you, Lauren, that it was so not that long ago. I would have thought that something like that with the required signature from the man would be more like 40 years ago. But we all have examples of this. I know when my husband and I were buying our house, I handled 90% of the work from, checking out the listings to calling the brokers to going all around, negotiating. And then we were in the final stretch. The real estate guy was like, can I speak with your husband? And I was like, why? Well, I want to make sure that he's on the same page with everything. And I was like, my husband knows nothing about what's going on with this, and we're both okay with it. So when it comes time to sign something, yes, he'll be there. But in order to have a conversation related to the sale of this house, no, he doesn't need to be here. And I made it very clear, and I was really irritated. It was a while ago. That was almost 20 years ago, but still, I found that surprising. I felt like, really, who does that? Like, he was like a 25-year-old guy. Maybe it was because he was young, but you would think he would be more progressive since he was younger. So, yeah, it still happens.
We started with the bank example. On a somewhat related note, I'm just curious, Liz or Jackie, have either of you had issues with, we've been reading a lot of stories about a credit crunch. Are either of you having trouble with lines of credit or loans or anything along those lines?
So I have not, but I just got my line increased like about 2 months ago. And I think that if it had been later than that, I might have had more trouble. But for us, it was increasing our line, and it was based on our 2022 tax returns.
We built up a savings account over the past 23 years that I treat like a line of credit. And so I am still continuing to loan to myself.
I like that. Do you give yourself a good rate?
I have a great rate.
All right. My thanks to Jennifer Kerhin, Liz Picarazzi, and Jaci Russo, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.